I have been harvesting cucumbers from my backyard. With all the rain we've had, they are just so big and juicy and so many of them.
Hmm.
Morning. Hi.
Hey, Anita. Hey, Sally.
How are you?
There we go. Again, if you guys notice somebody's logged in that needs to be logged in, let me know. Good to have you back, Sally.
Oh, thank you. Playing cookie. Not really. So you're presenting them to us according to the time? You're going by the time?
Yeah, I'm chronological, yes. Yep. So I probably have maybe 2 more sessions and I would have covered everything that I have. And then you'll have the rest of the summer off, run and jump.
I listened to your video from last time, and one thing that you talked about was the white eagle, and Poland has white eagles, and that's their symbol for their country.
Oh,
And if you go like to Chicago to the Polish, there's a lot of Poles in Chicago. In fact, the state holiday, what was his name? Pulaski?
Cashmere.
Pulaski was a state holiday. Everything closed, the schools and
oh,
everything.
wow.
Until just recently, probably in the last 10 years.
Mhm.
But, there's White Eagle Lodge and White Eagle this and White Eagle that.
Mhm.
So it's their national symbol, but it is become more of a rare bird, I think, there. So you were talking about Mary holding the eagle.
Well, I didn't know that. Oh, okay, let's get going. It's a little after 10. In the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit, amen. Thank you again, Lord, for gathering us here today to learn more about our apparitions and what's going on with Mary. She's always ready to come help us. She is our mother. She's also mother of the church, mother of us all, and we thank her so much for interceding for us and showing us how to live. Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou amongst women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners, now and at the hour of our death. Amen. Okay, so from 1830, 1877, we'll start with Our Lady of the Miraculous Medal, and in Paris, and there's the chapel there. So in the house, hello. Huh?
Yes, Kate.
Kate, yes. So we have Catherine, okay, and she was there praying, and she sees St. Catherine sees Our Lady standing on a globe with rays coming out of her hands. And then the inscription, "O Mary, conceived without sin, pray for us who have recourse to thee," was above it. And then Mary spoke to St. Catherine and said, "Have a medal struck with this model, and those who will wear it will receive great graces, especially if they wear it around the neck." So then the vision turned while she was watching, and it would show the reverse side of the medal. And you have the letter M surrounded by the 12 stars and with a bar across the base of the cross. And you see the Sacred Heart of Jesus with the thorns around it, and then the Sacred Heart of Mary with the sword going through it, where Simeon said when at the presentation, a sword will pierce your heart at the presentation of Jesus. So she asked St. Catherine to take the image to her confessor. And of course, he was reluctant to do anything. You don't just come up and say, hey, Mary said we should do this. Yeah. And so he investigated for 2 years. And I think he had some revelations also, some dreams or something like that. And only the priest was the only one that knew her name, who was doing this. So they were made in 1832 and distributed around Paris. And originally it was called the Medal of the Immaculate Conception. And so all the blessings that Mary promised started to become true. And soon everybody was calling it the Miraculous Medal. So I didn't know that till yesterday. Mary stands upon the globe as a queen of heaven and earth. The rays coming out stand for her graces. And when St. Catherine was looking at it, some of the graces were lit up and some were not. And that was, Mary said, that was because some of these graces that I'm giving out, people don't accept them. They don't take the graces, they ignore them. You see where her feet crushed the serpent. And this is the Mary conceived without sin, supports the dogma of the Immaculate Conception that was proclaimed 24 years later. So the cross and the letter M represent the relationship of Mary to the suffering, passion, and death of her son. The bar under the cross is the earth, also the altar. M signifies Mary and Mother. The two hearts represent the love of Jesus and Mary for us. And of course, the 12 stars are the 12 tribes, or also the 12 apostles, or the entire church. So then we have Our Lady of the Miracle in 1842 in Italy. And we were talking earlier that Mary appears to everybody. They could not know what they're doing, not be Catholic, could be Catholic. This guy was Jewish. And he was coming to Italy, and he made a call on Baron Theodore de Boussier, who was a fervent Catholic. And this Ratisbon ridiculed the Catholic Church, the superstitions and all that. So the Baron said, hey, wear a miraculous medal for a month, and also say the Memorare every day. And so he said, okay, it can't hurt, and I'll show you nothing happens. So later on, the Baron was on his way to the church, and he saw the Count, Alfonso. He saw Alfonso, and he asked him to come along with him, and said, why don't you come with me? And so he came with him. Ratisbon came with the Count, with the Baron. And the Baron went off to talk to the priest about arranging a funeral. So Ratisbon wandered around the church. He was looking at the statues and works of art. And he was before a side altar, and Our Lady appeared to him. It was 1842. And he saw this figure and knew that he was before the apparition of Mary. And he knelt down before her and converted. So when the Baron came back, and he was surprised to see the Jewish guy kneeling down on his knees in front of the altar, and he helped him up, and Ratisbon wanted to go to the confessor, go to the priest, and so he could receive baptism. So 11 days later, January 31st, he was baptized, confirmed, and got his first communion. Afterward, he became a Jesuit priest. 10 years later, he and his brother, Theodore, who was also Jewish, founded a religious congregation, the Congregation of Sion, which was working for the conversion of Jews. And there he is. So we have a Lady of La Salette in France. So there was, in 1846, two children, Maximum Girard and Melanie Calvat, 11 and 14. They were tending sheep for their employers in the French Alps. And in the parish of La Salette, there are less people going to mass, less and less. So Melanie, one of the 8 children, came from a poor family, began working at age 7. She didn't have any schooling, could barely recite the Our Father or the Hail Mary. And Maxim had very little religious education and no schooling. So Mary, again, she picks children, and a lot of times because, you can believe them after a while, more so than an adult, because they're not trying to get money or whatever. So while they were on their sheep, they saw a brilliant light, and they saw this beautiful lady seated on a rock and crying. And from her neck, she had a cross, and on each side of the crossbar of the cross, one end, there was a hammer and nails, and on the other end, a pincher, which is what we use to remove nails, like a grabber. And a heavy chain was on her shoulder. And so they asked her why was she there? And she said, there's 6 days for working. You were warned last year with the loss of potatoes. Yet you abused my son's name. If you have grain, it will do no good to sow it, for what you sow, the beast will devour. Any part of it that springs up will crumble into dust when you thresh it. Great famine is coming, but before that happens, the children under 7 will be seized with trembling and die. The grown-ups will pay for their sins by hunger, the grapes will rot, and the walnuts will turn bad. So, not too good of an omen.
Like that law.
Yeah.
Did this eventually happen though? Yeah.
So while investigating the site, someone broke off a piece of rock and a spring of water emerged. And then the spring kept going and steadily. And some of the water was given to a woman who had a long-term illness, and she was cured. And so people started to attend Mass faithfully. They confessed faithfully. They stopped working on Sundays, then returned to living a pious and devotional life. So from what the girls said, and the spring and the miracles that came from that, helped bring this La Salette back to Catholicism. So here's the church of La Salette. It's in the French Alps. And so what you're seeing is a procession. You see way up on the right side, you see the altar boys there carrying a cross, and you see these people are gonna around down here, around, and then back up to the church. And down on the, it's hard to see, but in the front of the church, there's this statue with Mary and the little girls, with the shepherd girls. And here it is from the view. Wouldn't that be neat to be going to that church every day?
Mm-hmm.
That is beautiful. So we have Our Lady of Lourdes, which you guys know some about. But again, every time I do this, I learn more. Bernadette Soubreau, she was getting firewood with her sister and another friend, and they kind of ran off. And then she saw the vision of Our Lady up in like in a grotto up on the side of the hill. And so she said, when they asked her what happened, she was interviewed over and over and over and over again. I raised my head and looked toward the grotto. I saw a lady dressed in white, wearing a white dress, a blue girdle, and a yellow rose on each foot, the same color as the chain of her rosary. And she was praying the rosary. So Bernadette said that she could hear her doing the Our Fathers and the Glory Bees, but she wouldn't recite the Hail Marys. Bernadette was recite the Hail Marys. So she came back, Bernadette came back on the 14th and 18th and saw the vision. And Mary asked her to come back every 2 days. She said, I'm the Immaculate Conception. And this was like maybe 4 years after the dogma of the Immaculate Conception was proclaimed. And she asked for a chapel to be built. So, and then she told Bernadette to dig in the ground, and water came out. And again, she was probably interrogated over her life 1,000 times, or I don't know, just between all the people there, everybody coming, all the visitors coming, wanted to see her and talk to her, the officials, the priests. And even when she went to the convent, she wanted to be isolated. And the other nuns were kind of jealous of her. And the kings, the queens, the princes, and all that would come to the convent and they'd want to see her. So did they have to drag her out, and then she'd tell her story again. After 4 years, apparitions were approved, and she entered a religious house and died at an early age. So went too fast. So there's one of the processions, the light procession that goes through. I've never been to Lourdes, but you can see that. And you can see on the right side, because it's a night picture, they had to hold the focus for a while. You can see the lights going out on the right side, the bottom right side, and on the left side, the lights going through there. And then the people pressing on the stand the lights. So this is the other crowd. Here's the grotto, and you can see they've taken these down. This is an older picture, but you can see all the crutches of the people that have been healed, that left their crutches there, that they don't need them anymore. And like we were showing last week or a couple of weeks ago, those are like the votives that say, you know, I was cured here, all those pictures that and signs and plaques that people put on the wall around the shrine saying I was cured. 7,000 cures and only 67 documented. They have atheist doctors and Protestant doctors and Catholic doctors and psychologists and so forth over there, that when something comes in and says I was cured, they have those different doctors and psychologists and priests and go over what happened to ensure that it was correct. So it had to be all kinds of documentation. If you had polio in one leg, you had to have all kinds of documentation on that. You come there, it's cured. You show that it was cured, and then it has to remain. So you can't be cured and then, you know, a year later you get it back again. So that's qualifications.
Is it the church that's so skeptical about it, or why does it take so long to, I don't know, verify a miracle or accept it as a miracle? Or
So your question was, why does the church do all that? Well, they want to say that there's miracles, but they want to be really sure that it was a miracle, because they don't want to say, oh, this happened, and then sometime later somebody shows up and say, oh, I fooled them, and then that would take away from all the miracles. Yeah.
It's a beautiful replica of that grotto at Notre Dame University in Indiana.
Oh, they do.
Mm-hmm.
So here's another side view of that. And there's Bernadette. Her body was incorruptible. And I think I've got a book, and there's maybe another 100 saints whose body was incorrupt. Now, this is wax coating over her face. The skin is still there, but it would be all black, you know, and on her fingers. So they coat the black skin with a kind of a wax to make it look more natural. So the skin has it, in a regular body, the skin would dry up and you just have a bones, but hers, I think they dug her up after 100 years or 200 years. And she was, she was just put in a coffin and put in the ground, nothing special. You know?
wow.
Did you hear about the one that recently that Sister Wilhelmina up in is it Missouri? They
Just-
went to move just recently.
Yeah.
Went to move. She started a convent up there. She's a black woman, a black nun, and they went to move her body just recently. I think it was in the newspaper. But when her body was incredible.
Okay, Sister
Wilhelmina.
Wilhelmina was found incorrupt in the United States. Okay. I
Just
kind of,
recently.
yeah, just recently. I kind of want to repeat the questions because when I'm recording it, they don't always hear the questions.
Hold on.
So I'm trying to do that better. So Our Lady of Good Help, Adele, this was back, this is Wisconsin. Here you go. Adele reported seeing a woman clothed in white standing between two trees.
Where's this at?
Wisconsin,
Oh,
this is the
okay.
one. And on October 9th, she saw the apparition a second time while walking to mass. And when she was coming back from mass the same day, she saw the apparition third time. And she asked what was going on. She says, "I'm the Queen of Heaven who prays for the conversion of sinners, and I wish you to do the same." So the lumber companies were harvesting, stripping the hills like they used to do. And they leave dead wood and sawdust and cut up limbs and everything. And this is about 11 years later. So they had built the chapel in Wisconsin. So about 11 years later, a firestorm began in Peshtigo, Wisconsin, which was like a ways from where she was. And it just spread so fast that like 2,000 people died because they couldn't get away from the wind and the fire quick enough. And so Adele organized a procession to beg the Virgin Mary for her protection. So everybody gathered in the chapel and it was saved, and the fire burned all the way around the chapel and it kept going until it died out. And it was a mess. I don't know how many miles and miles and miles. Probably something like what happened in Bastrop, if you ever driven up to Austin and see all those dead trees all over the place. So this, killing 2,000 people, that was a bunch. So whoever was in the chapel of Our Lady of Good Help was saved. And this is the chapel. Then we jump to the Czech Republic, and this is Mary Help of Christians. And what happened here, Magdalene Cade, she was suffering for many years from an illness, and she was an orphan. She lived with her older brother and his wife. And in 1866, she saw a vision of Mary, and Mary just healed her right then. Okay. So later, a mother wrapped the legs of her child that were going to be amputated in the cloth that was laid at the feet of Our Lady. So she took a cloth, put it at the feet of Our Lady at the shrine, and then put this cloth around the child. And after 3 days, he was healed. So he didn't have to cut off his legs. And finally, the chaplain, Father Francis Storch, recorded 11 sets of miracles, and they interviewed him and found out everything they needed to know. And the bishop in 1866 recognized the supernatural character of the events and made it a shrine. Then we go to France, Our Lady of Hope. This is we're going to talk about as she appears above this barn at night, and then underneath you could see some writing, and it was some writing on a cloth or whatever spread across the sky, and I'll talk about that. So it was January 1871. The Prussians were near, and it was wartime, and Pont Maine, where this happened, was only 30 miles away. And it was also bad on bad. It was going through a typhoid epidemic and smallpox epidemic, and it had an earthquake. Holy cow. And they didn't know if their prayers were going to be answered. They were praying for help, to someone help or help stop the Prussian troops from coming in. And then Mary appeared to the 4 children above a barn in Pont, Maine. And the description was that a message appeared, a large white banner underneath the feet of Our Lady. And it said that God had heard their prayers and he would answer their needs. So this apparition lasted 3 hours. And within 11 days, Prussia had mysteriously withdrawn its troops and signed an armistice, and the war was over. So Pont, Maine and France were spared of the Prussian invasions. And this commemorated in the barn is shown in the photo where you see Mary appearing and what happened.
We need to pray to Our Lady of Hope for Ukraine.
For your what?
For Ukraine.
Oh, Ukraine. Yeah. We need to pray for Ukraine all the time. Yeah. My son's father, who's Russian, said that Putin, the war wouldn't last 6 months because they don't have enough money, they don't have arms, and it's gone over a year now. Yeah, a year and a half. So they're draining Russia. It just can't keep going on. I mean, they're bringing prisoners there. Yeah, we need to pray for Ukraine.
Poland, who's taking care of so many of the refugees and helping so many people.
Yeah, Poland's taking a lot of the refugees. So there's the picture of the 4 kids that originally saw him, and a picture of the barn. Our Lady of Saint Gazille de la Sylvie. If I said that right. Virgin Mary appeared to Auguste Amon and asked him to build a cross. Then he made the wooden cross and put it where she had indicated. So on July 8th, a month later, a bunch of people gathered around. Some believed, some didn't. And they saw a second apparition. And Mary said to Auguste, don't work on Sundays. She said, happy is the one who will believe, and unhappy the one who will not believe. She said, go to Notre Dame de Gignac in procession, and you and your family will be happy. Then she slipped the rosary she had in her right hand and put it on her left hand, and then blessed the people with her right hand and sing hymns. So as a wine grower, Auguste, he became a fervent Catholic and died at 93. And again, they investigated this apparition by the bishop, and he authorized the construction of a shrine in 1879 in honor of the Blessed Virgin Mary.
What's the complete name? De la what?
La Sylve, or Sylve. Television, 1876. In February, a young woman, Estelle Faguet, she was dying from tuberculosis, and they thought she would die in a few hours. So Mary appeared to her 3 excessive nights, and she was cured. And Mary said there was so much disrespect for Jesus, and she asked Estelle to publish her glory. So you see Mary there standing with holding a petition, or holding a replica of the what she wanted made. So Estelle didn't know, what do you mean by publish her glory? So Mary appeared to her 10 times and said, we need to have more penance and expiation of sins, more confession. So Mary showed Estelle pictures of the scapular. And I don't know if you've heard of the white scapular. There's
No.
brown scapular, was this Carmel, the white, the green, for conversion. Yeah. She said she wanted Estelle to approach her bishop and give him a copy of the scapular. I don't know if Mary gave her an actual scapular. It wasn't set in there, but that's happened before. So probably that's what happened here. And if you would pour graces on those who wear it with confidence, it would help make it. So the Archbishop gave Estelle a favorable hearing and set up a commission to investigate the whole matter. And they established the archconfraternity under the title of Our Lady of Mercy, Our Lady of Pellevision, yeah. And
So both of those are her name, the Mother of Mercy, Our Lady of.
yeah, Mother of Mercy, Our Lady, yeah, that's both her names. You know, there's also about 100 names for Mary. Well, Our Lady of Pellevision, Our Lady of Good Hope, Our Lady of Good Faith, Our Lady of Victory, you know. So on April 14th in 1900, the Congregation of Rites said that they approved the scapular of the Sacred Heart. And so that says Mater Misericordiae, which is mercy. So Mother of Mercy on the scapular. So Poland, Mary of the Immaculate Conception. In 1877, Justina Salbrinska, she was walking home from church and she saw a light and a figure dressed in white on top of a maple tree. And Mary said, I want you to pray the rosary daily. Provided the people pray fervently, then the church will not be persecuted and the orphan parishes will receive priests. So on June 8, 28, a day later, Justina and Barbara saw the beautiful lady again, and there were 8 apparitions.
Richard, what is fervently? What is it
With strength to play,
like?
yeah, strongly,
With devotion?
with devotion, yes, that's fervently. So if you're sitting here praying, Hail Mary, rather than Hail Mary, full of grace, you know, that would be fervently. So a bunch of pilgrims went to Geertswald where this was happening. September 8th, the Virgin Mary, about 50,000 people came to Geertswald. And that day, Our Lady blessed a spring that was already there. And when they had drawn water from the spring, there have been a lot of healings. Again, the water concept, because water is cleaning, it's life, it's a life force, so forth. And then the bishop had a special commission of theologians, and they studied the case, and they gave the apparition a favorable verdict, and now they have the sanctuary there in Pellevision. So, questions so far?
What country was Grid's wall?
Yeah.
It sounds almost German, but parts of France went back and forth between German and French.
Yeah, and Belgium too. France is part of Belgium, wasn't it? Was part of Germany. Yeah.
Our Lady of the Miraculous Medal, was that French also? Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Our Lady of Knock in Ireland. Anybody been there? No. Kate, you have that Irish name.
I am, but I've heard of her.
Oh, okay.
But, yeah.
So on the 21st of August, 1879, it was a very wet night. This is kind of neat. And it was raining. And when Mary Byrne and Mary McLaughlin, they saw under the gable on the side of the church, they saw standing 3 people a little out from the gable, life-size figures. she ran to tell her parents, and soon everybody was gathering around looking at this apparition, which usually you don't have a bunch of people that can actually see. Down the road, I think, well, I don't know if I have the one that's been approved in Colombia. There's like 40,000 people saw this apparition of Mary, but I don't remember if I have that.
Which one is that? You don't remember?
They saw Our Lady, Saint Joseph, and Saint John the Evangelist. So you see Saint Joseph on Mary's right and John the Evangelist on her left, where he's holding, say, some scriptures, I think. But it was a church of Saint John the Baptist, all right, not John the Evangelist. And then on the left of all those was the altar with the lamb and the angels going around the altar and the cross. And a farmer about half a mile away from the scene, he saw a bit glowing around the church. So about 25 people saw this vision for a couple hours in the rain. And the figures were a few feet above the ground. And when it got dark, they could still see everybody plainly. Figures did not move. And below them, the ground remained dry. And so when after the 2 hours or 3 hours, everybody's talking about it, and then people start and tore up the wall. They wanted a part of the wall to take for remembrance, to help heal people, so forth, and for to use for cures. So after this, a new church was built in 1976 in Ireland, and it holds 2,000 people, and they have 500,000 visitors every year. And this is Our Lady of Sorrows in Italy. So Fabiano Cecchino and Serafina Valentino, they were sent to look for some sheep in the hills, and they saw light coming through the cracks. When they came closer, they saw Our Lady of Sorrows, and they saw her by herself, fair-skinned young woman, bleeding from the wounds that she had from 7 swords. And when the girls told everybody that, of course, they didn't believe it. And then later on, a child and then a heretic gave testimony, and they said, we saw it. So the people began to go up to the mountain, and some saw that they saw Our Lady bearing in her arms the dead son. They saw Our Lady by herself. They saw different visions, but that was the main thing, Our Lady and Jesus. And a pilgrimage began, like 4,000 people visited the spot within a few days. And there's only like a couple thousand people in the village. So soon a place that was unknown became the center of attraction, and countless crowds from the neighboring country started coming there. In 1890, they began building the shrine.
This is not the same as the Piazza, right?
No. So here's the interior of the basilica for Our Lady of Sorrows. And this is similar to some other churches where they have steps that you can go up and be right, close to the pictures. So in 1939, so this is what, 40 years, 50 years later, they began a tradition called the Fiesta de Covo, Feast of the Den, or of the cave or the grotto. And in August, the people would put together these a carriage, and they would carry model of a church or something significant made solely of intertwined ears of wheat.
Wow.
It takes months to build, and they did well-known churches or religious buildings from around the world. And they're a moving example of the love for the townspeople for their sanctuary and Our Lady. So The tall structure is the tower in Venice. Anybody been to Venice? No. So in Venice, you have the big square. And that you see that from the ocean side, and you have the church of Saint Mark. And then in the middle of the square is a tower of Saint Mark of the church, which is what this is. And you can see that from all around the island. And then to the right of that is the Cathedral of Santiago of Compostela, which is where people walk, the walk of St. James, where could be a 1,000-mile walk, it could be a one-day walk, depends, and there's all kinds of trails to go there. And that's the church there when they do that. You know the walk of St. James, right?
Our son did that.
Huh?
Our son did that.
Yeah, okay, your son did that. So here is the Basilica of St. Anthony of Padua in Poland. And the Cathedral of St. Basil in Russia, which is a newer church that they built. And one of the reasons they thought they would get more tourists in Moscow. So they built that church, so it's fairly new. And then the Basilica of the Sacré Cœur in Paris, which is the Sacred Heart in Paris. And there is what they make these things out of, one of the picture of we are wheat. Okay. Somehow they glue them together, cut off the stem or weave the stems together or something.
They don't deteriorate over time.
I guess if they keep them covered, look like these have been here for years, right? There's the Vatican and the plaza.
Look at them.
And the plaza, you see the Vatican, the St. Peter's, and it comes out, and then the ovals on either side, that's supposed to represent like the church's arms gathering the people together. And then you have all the saints around the top. And then the Cathedral of Orvieto in Italy, back behind it. And then to the far right is St. Peter's baldachin. And it was built, it was made by Bernini, who is a famous artist. And I was looking at that and I said, I don't remember this. They have the monstrance there, which isn't there. So I did a little more research. And this is what it looks like in the Vatican. So and you can see the guy standing there in the lower right. You can see how big it is. And so it's called a baldachin. So in older times, when the emperor or the king, whatever, was in procession and he was walking, they would have like 4 poles and a covering over that person. And they would walk and he would process with this covering over him. And then it got to be elaborate and whatever. And eventually they just called that a baldachin or a covering. And that's what this represents, 4 poles and a cover over the altar.
I've seen that done with the Pope on special occasions.
Yeah, the Pope. And there's sometimes you see a picture of an umbrella with the red and yellow, like I believe it's red and yellow.
That's what you know that it's a basilica. A cathedral is a basilica is because of the umbrella that's inside, which is that yellow, but it represents the Pope.
Yeah. So Kate said, when you see the umbrella in church, it represents the basilica because it represents the Pope. So, or you'll see a picture of it somewhere, this umbrella.
I've not been.
It's the colors of the Swiss Guard. Too.
Yeah, color of the Swiss Guards.
But right, I was just
So
saying, there's
protection.
basilica, you got it, and then if you go to San Antonio, there's the one Saint Teresa.
Yeah.
Doesn't a basilica have to be built in the form of a cross? too?
Crucifix.
You have the main, like where the pews and everything are, and then you have like the bar.
So the question is, does a basilica have to be in a cruciform structure? And I don't know.
Right.
Yeah. I don't think
It's
necessarily.
just inland. And it wasn't,
It was.
and it was started in 1908. And it's straight up and along the sides, for chapels, small chapels. If you ever get to St. Louis, you should go to the new cathedral. There's an old cathedral, which is the church of St. Louis. The new cathedral is the largest piece of mosaic art in the world. The entire church is mosaic. You look up and it's mosaic. If you look up the St. Louis New Cathedral, it is stunning. It's like people have gone in there and say they're like the European, but it started in 1908, something like that. And it was the same German architect family that did all of it. And Pope St. John Paul was in there and they just operated it.
So Kate said, if you go to St. Louis, you should look up this cathedral that has
The new one.
basically covered with mosaic art. And it's a new cathedral. So, and if you look below this baldachin is the altar, the main altar that only the Pope can use. And then there's steps below. So right here. And there is the tomb of St. Peter, and also an altar down there that you can do. So,
The word altar.
yeah,
St. Peter's altar.
yeah. And they found that a guy from the Woodlands helped finance digging under St. Peter's when they were doing renovation, and they found the crypt that St. Peter, because they had always thought that the church was built over his tomb, but they never know. And this was, 100 years ago or something. He was an old guy. You can use all this stuff at the next party if you want. And here, so back behind all this, you see all the gold. And I always thought the chair of St. Peter was on top of this baldachin. But no, it's behind. And this is what they say, that they had the original chair that Peter used was made out of wood, and they had kept it in the Vatican, and they say this was it. And you can see it, it's made out of bronze now, but it's back behind the altar, further back in the curved part of the church. So this is not underneath the baldachin, is way further back. And a little side, you see these columns here, and they go up in this one. And you can hide these columns that hold up. From there, once a year or whatever time, they hold up the cloth that Veronica had, Veronica's cloth, and show it to the people.
It's hard to imagine the size of that St. Peter.
Yeah, but it's huge. It's huge. If you ever go there, make sure you go with a tour. When I was there, I was doing the tours of the shrines of Italy. And so we went down the street behind the Vatican, took a left, went down another street behind it, took a left and went up to the front of the Vatican. All that was lined up with people, like 3 or 4 blocks of people waiting to get in. So our bus went up to the front. We walked out, walked on in, because we were with the tour, and all those people would be waiting. Probably some of them would never get there. Yeah, so tour, Our Lady of China. So it's located near Beiping and in a village called Tonglu, which is called the place of beggars. And 1900, some 700 Christians were gathered in the little hamlet, and the Boxer Rebellion was sweeping China, one of the revolutions. And a force of 10,000 rioters attacked this village. And when they were just starting to attack, this woman in white appeared in the clouds. And the soldiers saw that, so they started shooting at the sky, shooting at this vision. And when the vision did not fade, they didn't have a time to reorganize because they saw this strange horseman coming at them. And so they all ran off and they never came back. And they say this horseman was probably St. Michael coming off and scared off all these soldiers. So they built a new life. They had Father Wu asked the painter to dress Our Lady this vision. They made a painting of this vision and they put her in the royal robes of the Empress. So then it was destroyed by the communists, but the picture of Our Lady of China remains intact because they only used a copy of the picture in the church, but the original was hidden in the walls behind the copy, and this was recovered after they tore down the church and found intact. So now it's possession of the Chinese priests who use it to carry out their processions and stuff and activities in disguise. So I guess they have to figure out when there's not going to be any communists around and they can carry the picture. I would say this is a picture, is probably a copy again. They probably have the original somewhere else. So Our Lady of Fatima. And I didn't know this till I really started a couple of years ago looking into this, that the first apparition was from an angel. And you have Lucia, Francisco, and Jacinta. They were in the meadow with their sheep, and a white light enveloped them, and a cloud, and a young man who said to them, "Fear not, I am the angel of peace, pray with me." And the angel knelt down and bowed very low. And they knelt down and repeated his words. And this was the pardon prayer. Have you heard of this? You have, Anita? Yeah. Well, you're pretty saintly. I'm not there yet. So. Oh, okay.
Can we find it in a religious store, you think?
I got this in the mail from a charity.
So it says, yeah, my God, I believe, I adore, I hope, and I love you. I beg pardon of you for those who do not believe, do not adore, do not hope, and do not love you. So Nita, when do you say this every day, or when you think about it, or?
When I'm in adoration, it's kind of a pamphlet for adoration, and it has different.
Okay, so you have this adoration pamphlet.
This will be in your video that you send us, right?
Oh yeah, yeah. This will all be on YouTube. And then he rose and said, "Pray this way. The hearts of Jesus and Mary are very attentive to the voice of your supplication." And by the way, I go to adoration a couple times a week, and there's a really good adoration book put together from St. Faustina's sayings. If you might look that up, I use that. Second angel apparition was in the summer, and they were playing near the well of Lucia's house. And the angel said to them, "What are you doing? Pray a great deal. The hearts of Jesus and Mary have merciful designs on you. Offer prayers and sacrifices continually to the Most High." And they said, "How do we sacrifice ourselves?" He said, "Make everything you do a sacrifice and offer it as an act of reparation for the sins by which God is offended and as a petition for the conversion of sinners." So, third apparition came at Quebeco, and they started prayers when they saw the angel. He had a chalice with a host over it, and the host was bleeding. Drops of blood were going in the chalice. And then he taught them the angel's prayer, which I won't repeat because we're running out of time. Reparation for the outrages, sacrileges, and indifferences wherever he is, wherever Jesus is. So then we started having the apparitions of Mary in May 13th, 1917. She appeared 6 times. She said, I want you here for 6 consecutive months. And she said, do you come from heaven and will I go to heaven? Lucia asked. She said, do you want to offer yourselves to God? If you do, you will have a lot to suffer. And of course, Mary came back the 2nd time in June. There was about 50 people there. And she told Lucia, I'm going to take Jacinta and Francisco, which she did in about a year after that. But you're going to stay here, Lucia, and make known what's happening here. So Lucia died in 1980, 1970, something like that. And Mary departed. So Maria Carrera saw the cloud. She didn't see Mary. She saw the cloud disappear, go up. 3rd apparition, she wanted them to pray the rosary. She showed them a vision of hell. She opened the ground and there was a vision of hell. And she wanted to establish a devotion to her Sacred Heart to save souls. It's like the creation of Russia done to her. And I don't know what took them so long, but they finally consecrated Russia to Mary. And Lucia said, yes, they eventually did it, but it took them forever. And this is where you get this, oh my Jesus, forgive us our sins, save us from the fires of hell, lead all to heaven, especially those in most need of that mercy that we say at the rosary. 4th, the constable and the police stopped the children from going out there. But later on the 19th, 6 days later, there's about 30,000 people out there for the 5th apparition. The 4th, it took them 2 days later. And there's like 10,000 people.
Is that the one where the sun was moving around, or
That's the 6th one. That's this one.
this one? Okay.
Okay, 70,000 people. It was raining. The rain stopped suddenly. The sun was dazzling. It was going in circles. It came down, looked like it came down toward the people, and everybody fell to the ground, started crying out. And not only the people here saw it, but people miles away that weren't even there saw all this happening with the sun. So I tried to say that it was a mass illusion, a mass hypnotism or something, and there's no such thing as a mass hypnotism. You can't hypnotize everybody, all right? They saw St. Joseph with the child of Jesus. He blessed the world. And visions of the Lady of Mount Carmel finished the miracle. And then afterwards, everybody noticed that their clothes were dry after the pouring rain. So
An actual picture.
yeah, I don't know if that's a picture of the sun or they threw that in there, but it's a picture of the people. Yeah. And Lourdes, Our Lady of Victory, and Antoine and Tony. She had the Spanish influenza, and Mary appeared to her and laid her hands on her and healed her. Then, 20 years later, she was the manager of one of her father's butcher shops, and this was just before World War I stuff. And they placed the painting of the Virgin by the one the Fuhrer put in there. So she disobeyed, and there were several attempts to murder her. But the parents put a small Lourdes grotto in their garden. So a year later, Mary appeared to Cecilia Geyer. She said, build a chapel for me. And she said, now go and adore my divine son who's in the Blessed Sacrament. And Cecilia said, where can I do this? You know, we're in, it's not exposed anywhere. So a chapel appeared, and inside the altar, Jesus had this throne in magnificent monstrance that was projecting wonderful rays. So the government authorized the building of the chapel to Our Beloved Lady, Mother of Victory, and they had planned the inauguration for December 8th, Feast of the Immaculate Conception, but she was arrested by the Nazis. But the Virgin appeared to her in her cell and told her that she would spend Christmas with her family. So she was let go on the 18th, and then the pilgrims came to the shrine, and then now 50,000 or 500,000 visit it every year. So we've got two more: Belgium, Our Lady of Lorraine. These 4 girls were walking to school to meet a friend and walk back. And when they reached where they thought Mary dressed in a long white robe near a railroad viaduct or a railroad crossing. So they were below and they could see her on the railroad crossing, near a railroad crossing. And let me see. Albert saw him first, okay? And then the other 4 children saw her also. So over the next week, they saw the lady 32 more times, who wanted a chapel built there. And say that I'm the Immaculate Virgin. She also desired pilgrims to come to the site and ask the children to pray, 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 which is what Mary says at Medjugorje: pray, pray, pray. And there's the chapel. So in Belgium, also, this is Virgin of the Poor. So only 12 days after she appeared to the 5 children in Bahrain, she also appeared in Mano, about 50 miles from Bahrain. And Mariette was the first one. She looked out her window and she said, I saw a lady in the garden. It's the Virgin. They saw the lady 32 more times. And the next night Mariette went to the garden and said the rosary. Her father followed her out and gave her a coat, and the child was beckoned to a spring. And then Mary said, this spring is set aside for me. And there's 6 and 7 more apparitions of Our Lady of Mano. She said, who are you? She said, I'm the Virgin of the Poor. And she led the girl to a spring and said, this spring is for all nations, for the sick. And I want a chapel built here to relieve suffering, and have faith in me and pray much. So from then on, this spring, people would take the water and there would be miracles from that. And this is Mariette Becco. They all became model Catholics. They built the chapel, and the spring was the site of numberless cures. And during the occupation of Belgium, the bishop encouraged the cult of Our Lady of Mano, Our Lady of the Poor. There you go. Any other questions?
Our Lady of Victory, there's a place right here going to Corpus, but I think it's called Our Lady of Schoenstatt. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing it correctly. But there's a place right there, right by the ocean, and there's a little shrine. And she looks exactly like that.
Okay, a shrine on the way to Corpus
It's a
Christi.
small shrine, and it's a convent, but there's a lot of nuns there. The convent, they have a little gift shop. I used to go visit my daughter in Corpus Christi before COVID a lot, and I would stop there. I don't remember the name of the little town where it's at. Copa something, I don't remember, but she looks just like that, but she has a different name.
Okay.
I have a little prayer card that's a prayer for mothers.
So what I remember is a nun is in a convent, and the religious is the nuns that are out like teachers. So yeah, so if you're a nun, you're in a convent.
You're not, you're in a convent. If your sister, you're out.
Do they dress the same though?
Yeah, that could be.
every order is different. My aunt is a precious blood,
None.
of the order of precious blood. She has a ring. And it's a gold ring with a ring top with the seal on top of it. I was taught by Ursuline nuns. They all wore a certain cross. That was of
Distinguish
their
that?
order.
Yeah,
So every order has their has it looks like that. They
So-
have their
so
looks,
when
but
the-
they're all a little bit different.
when they're in a